I hereby call to order this meeting of the School Board of District 200. Mr. Buck, would you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance? Oh! Roll call. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Copfield?
Here.
Mr. Gambiani?
Here.
Mrs. Crabtree? Here. Mr. Matheson?
Here.
Mrs. Intihar? Here. Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mr. Berman?
Here. Mr. Buck, would you please lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Future teacher voice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. Again, the report from Monroe School.
Welcome to Monroe Middle School. We are glad to have you here tonight. We're excited about presenting something that we've been doing for a relatively short period of time, but we're finding some great success with it in working with our students. And it's called Restorative Justice. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we came to start Restorative Justice at Monroe, and then we'll kind of tell you a little bit about it and kind of where we're going to go from here.
So a couple of years ago, Brian and I were actually invited to a restorative circle. There was an incident and they asked us to be part of it, and there was several parents and students of ours, and we circled up, and it was a very moving and meaningful experience. So after that, and Brian and I were part of it, we started to go to some workshops and seminars to learn for ourselves how we could bring that to our school. So we're going to share a little bit about what that looks like tonight.
As you know, students learn best when they are in our classrooms listening, collaborating, creating. When students make bad choices in the past, we typically remove them from the learning environment. Restorative justice really helps us get to the root cause of what is happening and how they're feeling, so they can get back into the classrooms and they can learn better. So this is a quote from Bernard Bush, and it's symbolic of the power of restorative justice. As administrators, we're always looking for things to add to our toolbox, and in order to help students in restorative justice and peace circles, help take a look at the students as something other than, as the quote here says, a nail. So we think that it's a really helpful tool that we have that we're able to use, and so we'll talk a little bit about how we're using it.
So as we look at what restoration or restorative circle is about, it's about restoring the harm that's done with another individual. So that could be student to student, it could be a student who disrespected a teacher. In one of the circles, we actually had a police officer in the circle as well. And the whole purpose of a restorative circle is to get to the root cause, look at the harm that's been done, talk about that, and restore the relationship. And the school has an interesting perspective that's a little bit different, say, than the police department, because we have these kids for 3 more years. And so we have to make sure to restore the harm that's been done to both the victim and also the one who's causing the harm. So we try to restore and help to teach and build up both parties involved. So a peace circle, we actually had a video, but because of time, we just took a photo, but that's what a peace circle looks like. That's my office, and there was a police officer in this corner that you can't see, but there were 2 students, and my counselor. I always have another adult in the circle, and we just circle up. And this is after I have already talked to them individually, and once they give me permission to try to get together and restore, kids are really open to trying it. They like something new. So what we do is we gather in a circle, and the whole purpose is to try to learn to listen to one another and to speak from a reflective perspective, and then try to solve the problem together. So it's the shared experience, it's hearing from one another, and then in the end, the big goal is to create a safer community. So a lot of times I do this is after students have been suspended, and then when they come back after a fight, they do a re-entry with me, and we sit down together like this so that we can spend a period together, so that when they leave my office, I feel a better sense that they're not going to, have a fight or another disagreement.
So obviously some of the initiatives that we have going in our district, SEL is one that I know you've heard a lot about, and so this is something that we feel really strongly that supports SEL, and moves us closer to achieving those 3 goals. As you can see from what Susan's already talked a little bit about, they're really in line with those 3 goals, and all the restorative justice things that we've learned and we continue to learn really fit with all of those, and we could probably talk for 20 minutes on how all of it fits in those 3 things, but we wanted to let you know that this is not a new thing. These are things that we're already working on. As with these 2 things, we've talked about multi-tiered systems of support and fit, and how those things that we're doing, trying to work individually with students and help students with their relationships and how to communicate positively, both fit really strongly in with the 2 other initiatives that we're doing. So we feel strongly that what we're doing with kids and how we're having these circles is really powerful when it comes to the things that we're already trying to do. And the third thing, not a district initiative, but a state initiative, Senate Bill 100, as we know, talks a lot about exclusionary practices and things like that, and like we talked about, what we're trying to do is maybe lessen some of those inclusionary practices, because we're getting kids together and they're working out their differences without having them, have to be at home or in the office. They can be back in class.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a circle with you and let you know how the different phases of it. The first piece of it is just going through the rules of engagement and the confidentiality, and so that people have a sense of safety and that what's said in my office stays there. So, and then we go around and do a quick check-in so that they can talk about what are you feeling right now today, in 1 word or 2 words, give me your feelings. So we go around the circle and they kind of do a check-in. If they're nervous, if they're upset still, those kinds of things. So I get a gauge for where they're at. Then is a little short presentation of the issue, because I don't want to keep going back over and rehashing what happened. What my focus is, where do we go from here? So it's a quick summary of the issue that happened, and the main thrust is the sharing and the discussion of the circle, and then we wrap it up, because the hard work is when they walk out the door of my office. So here's what we do. The rules discussed are placed on the floor, because in a circle, and when you're talking feelings, everybody's gaze goes down. So I put the rules right on the floor. And some of those rules are respecting, not interrupting, sharing your feelings, trying to take another person's perspective, all the kinds of things that we're trying to teach kids to learn. The big thing is only speak when you have the talking piece. And a talking piece can be anything. My talking piece happens to be a fine talking stick from the tribes up in northern Wisconsin. But you can have any talking piece. It could be a stone, a water bottle, whatever is significant. The main thing is that when the kids hold it, they're the only ones that have the floor. Nobody else can speak. And they sort of think that's a little magical, although what we're really teaching them to do is to take turns speaking. And the benefits of the talking piece and the talking circle is that kids are often in each other's space in front of a lot of kids. And so they really never get an opportunity to talk in a quiet space and really share meaningful feelings with one another. It also gives responsibility for your actions, and you have to face the person. and talk to the person that harm's being done, which they're not used to doing, as we all know that they're on their cell phones and texting and those kinds of things. So here, they actually have to speak about it. And I think it really promotes better listening skills, better respect in taking someone else's opinion, and just taking turns. And the last one is it reinforces everybody's equality. Even if you have a student with a staff member or a student with a police officer, when you're in a circle, everybody is sharing equally. So the thing that I have them do, how are you feeling right now in 1 or 2 words, and then they pass the talking piece around. And then we get into the 4 questions. These are really the 4 questions that seem to be enough to get kids moving forward. So the first thing is, how have you been affected since the incident happened? You know, and were other people affected? You know, your parents, your classmates, your teacher. The next question I ask is, what have you thought about since the incident? You know, they've had a lot of time to reflect, and it's interesting to hear what they come up with that. This third piece, what do you think needs to take place to repair the harm done? This is the time where they almost always, except for maybe once or twice, have come on their own to an apology. So I never made anybody apologize, but that question it's amazing to watch the kids apologize or shake hands on their own, and they come to that on their own. What do you need from each other moving forward? This is the piece where, you know, we're going to coexist in this building. You probably have 7 more years together. What would help to move forward? And a lot of times they will say, I need you to quit talking about me, or I need you to quit, you know, putting things up on social media and that kind of thing. And we really hash out how you're going to leave my office and deal with your friends, because they like to keep things going. So these 4 questions are really all it takes, and it usually takes about a half an hour, the whole process. And here's some comments. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The comments from the students afterwards. I ask, how was it for you? And then I write down some of the things that they say. I don't need to read them all for you. The one I like the most is, I didn't know I was getting on his nerves. That was my favorite one, especially if you could have heard what the issues were. And then another one that I think is very real is that kids have felt, I don't have to worry about drama now. I can start focusing on school or my classes. And then I've had several staff that have been really disrespected, and I got them in there, and it was really moving and powerful. I mean, I've even had staff come to tears in the experience because it was so powerful. But they too, I think, feel more humanized in the process that the student has to share. And then they also, I've had teachers apologize to the students sometimes. So it's really, really powerful when you watch it. You know, you have to be able to let go and trust the process for it to be effective, but it's been a really beneficial. In fact, I am proud to tell you that for all the kids that I've had come through the circles, I've never had the same kids back for any issues between each other. And there was one rough circle, and I told them I have never had a circle that didn't work, and it was a little rough when they left. And the next morning, they came up to me, the 2 boys came up to me and said, I don't want you to think that your circles failed because we worked it out later that night. So they took it a step further on their own. So I was really excited about that. And, you know, it's just been a kind of a shot in the arm for me too, as being the disciplinarian, to find new ways to try to help the kids learn the skills instead of just face consequences.
And so I just actually a couple days ago did a 9-person, so I had 9 7th grade girls doing
all girls.
All girls. And so being the dad of 3 girls, actually this really works well with your children too, so I pulled it on them once in a while too. So like I said, we are on the baby steps of this. I mean, we just kind of started, you know, going to a few conferences and really trying this out. We actually presented to all the principals last week about this, and so we've got some things that we want to do next, and so that's kind of we want our guidance counselors. We have 1 guidance counselor that went with me to get training, but we'd like 2 more to go and get the training. We're going to have our entire SIT team, which means our counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, speech, We'll all get a half-day training to kind of learn a little bit more about this. Then we want to start doing some classroom circles. So this not only works well with individual students, but if there's something happening in a classroom, there's a whole way that teachers can work with the classroom to kind of talk about these issues and make that relationship and their rapport in their classrooms really positive. So we want to learn more about that with the staff. We want to do a little bit with enhanced lunch detentions and after-school detentions instead of just having them sit there for an hour, to start reflecting and using some of these questions and being able to kind of think about what did I do and how can I not do that, and have some adults kind of help them process with that instead of just having them do our normal lunch detention. And then, like I said, we want to do some training with teachers. So thank you very much for
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Ms. Altman, also thank you very much.
I just have to say that I love that. That is so amazing what needs to be done in all schools. I am so excited for that, and I just thought of other, areas to use it, so.
Is this a setup or what? The next item on the agenda, are there any modifications to the agenda that board members would like to make? Hearing none, we go to recognition and achievements. Dr. Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Broman. We are extremely excited this evening for our recognition. And I don't want to steal the thunder of a couple of staff members that are here to do this recognition this evening. I know hiding in the back, I can't even see her, but I know that she's hiding back there near Erica's Lee Cook. And Lee is an absolutely amazing technology instructor, administrator. I can keep going with all of the words that we can use to describe the work that she's done to really take our learning environment that's clearly been a focus of the district and move it to the classroom level to help teachers across the district really see what that looks like. And Lee was recently honored as the tech educator administrator, I think, of the year from the Illinois Computing Educators. And I want to invite, I believe, Mary Beth Collins. Would you please come up? And Mary Beth is going to share a couple of thoughts about Lee and why she's so deserving.
I am the LLC director at Pleasant Hill, but we also have some other LLC directors back here with me tonight. But I'll tell you, every year we have the pleasure of getting, or the good fortune of attending the Illinois Computing Educators Conference on Institute Day, and all the LLC directors have the pleasure of getting to go there. And every year we go and we watch somebody get this Specialist of the Year award, and we also do this one, that should be Lee, that should be Lee. And so this year we decided to do something about that, and a whole bunch of us filled out the nomination form, and it's a lengthy nomination form. Not only did the LLC directors fill out this form, but several teachers did too. And I'll tell you, it was such good news that she got nominated. She's so deserving of it, and so I don't ramble, I wrote down what I wanted to say. If you go anywhere in our district and see a tech project, follow that trail. Lee's thumbprint is on that. Whether it be from the inspiration she gave one of the LLC directors or teachers, from the beginning, the spark of it, or troubleshooting in the midst of the project, Lee's on it. Almost on a weekly basis, someone comes to an LLC teacher and they want some kind of collaboration where you're our fit goals, the district put forward. And so we feel supported and ready to do that from one of Lee's trainings. But if in the midst of the project we have any kind of problem with that, we shoot her email, and literally within minutes Lee shoots us back. I can't do it right now, I'll get to you, or she has the answer. I mean, literally, she's back quick. So not only is it an award for Lee, this is a feather in the cap for our district. We should really be proud of this. Thank you, Lee.
I have to tell you, as Lee is coming up, so I have the good fortune of having the office that is closest to all of the tech sessions, and every time that there is a professional development session going, Lee has something new up her sleeve, whether it's wearing a swimming cap or dressed in like Harry Potter, or you name it. She's got a theme and a way to engage people, and so I truly mean big congratulations. Our FIT guide would not have come to life in the way that it is without your support. So if you would come up, the board would love to congratulate you.
The next item on the agenda is public comments, but we have no public comments tonight. At this time, I don't know if there's any staff here from Monroe. They are welcome to stay through the rest of this wonderful meeting and wrap up what we're going to address tonight. But if they have better things to do, they are welcome to leave, and we appreciate them coming. So I guess there's maybe from the room here. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention quickly underneath my report. We, a little bit later on the agenda this evening, are going to be talking with, as a board, about kind of next steps in terms of master facility planning. I wanted to offer, though, one quick thank you, especially with lots of members of our audience here. Throughout the process leading up to the April 4th referendum question, we had a tremendous opportunity to engage with our community. And we had lots and lots of community members that stepped up in a willingness to host events, host coffees, host opportunities for us to share information. They did it certainly staying very neutral in terms of the question itself, but really did it, I think, with an effort in making sure that our community was very engaged in the communication effort. And so I want to offer just a sincere thank you to all of the members of the community that certainly engaged with us. And we're going to be talking later about next steps, but I truly was honored to have had the opportunity to spend as much time as we did with the community. A little bit earlier today, I think there was an article in the Daily Herald actually that talked about fund balances for school districts. And I just wanted to make one comment relative to District 200. I think we were certainly referenced in the table, and it referenced the fact that District 200 has a 30% fund balance, which again is a little bit above our 25% floor. As we get a little bit later into the agenda this evening, there's a point where we're making one more transfer from our operations and maintenance fund to our education fund. When we hit what is going to be kind of the lowest cash point in the school year for us, especially in light of the fact that we have not received a single categorical payment from the state of Illinois this year, our low cash point this year is going to be down to about $1.5 million. So that article, I want to thank the Herald for pointing out the fact that the Board of Education had the foresight to set a fund balance policy. If we did not have that 30% fund balance policy, this is a classic case this school year where one of the items that would have been on your agenda this evening would likely be to have done some short-term borrowing in terms of covering that shortfall from the state. So again, I just I wanted to mention that and put a context to why that 25% fund balance policy is, we run it out, and we've heard some inklings that there's a chance we may get one categorical payment in the next month. but we will not see quarters 2, 3, and 4 before the end of your fiscal year on June 30th. We will not likely see those until well beyond that. I think left in Mr. Broman's folder this evening a notice from the Illinois Association of School Boards that their window is open for local school boards if you have any interest in considering a resolution for the upcoming conference that will obviously be later in this calendar year. I believe that June the 21st is the deadline for local school boards if there's any interest in advancing a resolution. Typically, those resolutions provide some guidance for the association as a whole on perhaps some laws or an area that you want to perhaps advance on behalf of the Association of School Boards. But again, now is the time to think about that. And then the last thing I just wanted to share is that just recently the state of Illinois has submitted its proposal under the new Elementary Secondary Education Act, and their new ESSA plan to the federal government. I've been working with Julie Ozenkowski on getting together kind of a summary of what the new Illinois Accountability Plan is that they've submitted under ESSA. It's still got some steps to go through to be approved by the Federal Department of Education, but I did want to make sure that the board had some kind of understanding of how accountability is potentially going to change in the years to come under the new plan. So we're working on a summary to try to make what is a pretty detailed plan pretty straightforward for you. So that's on its way.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Is there anything we can do about getting those state payments? Is there anybody lobbying on our behalf to get those? You know, we can't have nothing coming in here and nothing coming in there. It's kind of like a little squeeze on our students. Is there anybody doing anything? Should we be calling people? Should we be taking any kind of action?
Yeah, it's really, the payments have all been vouchered, so it really is, it sits in the comptroller and a cash flow issue in the state, so even legislatively, there's nothing legislatively that can be done to advance them. You know, certainly the ISB's vouched the payments, they just are sitting until the cash flow becomes available. But I can assure you, every lobbying entity that's down in Springfield has been working on that issue and helping. And I think that's the last thing that I do want to mention with that. And I've shared it locally with our legislators. In fact, I think back in early January, I shared it in a conversation with Representative Ives that it's disingenuous for the state to tout the fact that they have passed a budget that fully funded education when in fact they're not delivering that money. It's, you know, they've spent a lot of time suggesting that, boy, they've taken care of schools, they passed that, you know, the stopgap education budget, but for us, that's a gap of almost $12 million that has not come to the school district. So again, I've shared my 2 cents that, you know, if you're not going to actually make the payments, please stop saying you funded education. So that's my share.
We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Please bear with me. Number 1, acceptance of grant from donors choose to Hawthorne Elementary School. 2, acceptance of gift to Pleasant Hill Elementary School. 3, acceptance of gift to North High School Athletic Department Wrestling Program. 4, approve revised policy 5.190 teacher qualifications. 5, approve revised policy 6.320 proficiency. 6, approve revised policy 7.285 physiology. 7, approve policy 7.290 suicide and depression. 8, approve revised board policies. The board members, I'll refer you to the attachment. That is to the agenda. 9, approve the deletion of board policies 2.242, 2.270, 3.20, 3.22, 3.52, 4.31, 4.52, 4.155, 6.75, 6.90, 6.200, and 7.08. Approval 10, approval to post middle school social studies standards for public review and comment. 11, appointment of district representative to the DuPage Area Occupational Education System for the 2017-2018 year. 12, approval of paving projects and building permits at Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Whittier, Madison, and SSC. 13, approval to dispose of surplus assets. 14, approval of snack vending contract services proposal. 15, rejection of bid for activity vehicle lease and approval of the extension of current lease. 16, approval of Chartwell's food service management contract renewal. 17, approval of 2017-18 fee schedule. 18, approval of bills payable and payroll. 19, approval of minutes, March 8, 2017, open and closed, and approval to destroy recording of closed sessions prior to November 2015 is allowable by law. And 20, approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Are there any items board members want to move from the consent agenda?
I have number 17, approval of 2017-18 fee schedule.
Are there any other items board members wish to move from the consent agenda?
I have number 12 on the paving projects.
It's approval of paving projects and building permits at Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Whittier, Madison, and SSC. Dr. Schuler?
Let me just clarify then on the agenda, the approval of 2017-18 fee schedule will become action item number 4. Moving down, and the approval of the paving projects and building permits at Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Whittier, and Madison, and the SSC will become action item number 5. No additional information on the rest of the consent.
Are there any questions or comments from board members with respect to the consent agenda as read so far?
Can I ask some questions? On item number 10, approval to post the middle school social studies standards for public review and comment. Usually what follows standards are materials. Are there, we anticipate needing some new materials for that in the curriculum? For the standards and the curriculum standards?
No, we don't anticipate adopting the textbooks. And doing that, we've been going through and looking through the resources, and there are a lot of sites that are online and free that will be pulling from that. And a lot of the content for some of those standards has already been in place, but we're teaching different standards using those same subject matter.
Any other questions or comments from Dr. Schuler? And just for the record, I would like the public to know that, as we have in the past explained, that particularly with respect to consent agenda items, the board members review the entire agenda over the weekend before board meeting. And to the extent we have questions, particularly with respect to consent agenda items, we will send emails to Dr. Schuler with respect to questions and comments we have on those consent agenda items. And Dr. Schuler will reply to all board members' answers to those questions. And then we do reserve some time for specific questions during the actual board meeting, which you've heard tonight.
Actually, I have one more question, please. I did ask Dr. Schuler about number 15, rejection of bid for the activity vehicle lease and approval of extension of the current lease. And it seems that we're kind of in a we're at a point where we can't negotiate that should the need for one of those or two of those vehicles, let's say, drop off if we end up cutting some activities or whatever. So it's a minor point, but it would be nice if before we have to approve this, we take a look at we're moving all, it's only about, what, 2,000, is it 2,000 per vehicle, 6,000? It's pretty,
You know, the amount of things.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance.
I know, I saw it.
I'll tell you that these activity vehicles are used daily to save money for smaller teams because of the amount of cost to use big buses. So teams that we can get 13 on, we do, we have savings at 6,000 per vehicle.
And I realized that, I didn't think it was on the board when we first went to that whole process, but if we end up cutting some activities such that we could release a bus, obviously we won't be able to do that. I mean, we're facing a budget shortfall, and if we start cutting, then maybe one of those or two of those would be needed, and we can save that money. That was kind of the nexus of my question. And then I also had a question on, or a statement I wanted to make about number 16. In the agenda, it says it has a $2.2 million cost. And I realize that $2.2 million apparently is recovered. So even though we spend $2.2 million for the food, what the receipts that we get in cover that, so that's a zero net effect.
Hearing no further questions or comments, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as modified and as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson,
Second?
seconded by Mrs. Mentahar. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mrs. Intihar?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Broman?
Yes.
Somebody voted for me.
Yep. And we also have a policy posting consent agenda, and the items of that agenda are as follows. 1, approval to post revised policy 2.100, board conflict of interest for the public review and comment. 2, approval to post revised policy 4.15, identity protection for public review and comment. 3, approval to post revised policy 5.120, ethics for the public review and comment. 4, approval to post revised policy 5.230, maintaining student discipline for public review and comment. 5, approval to post revised policy 6.210, instructional material for public review and comment. 6, approval to post revised policy 6.70, teaching about religion for public review and comment. And 7, approval to post revised policy 7.100, health exams for public review and comment. Are there any items the board members want to remove from the policy posted with the consent agenda? Hearing none, Dr. Schuler.
No additional information, just the one clarification. So these policies are not part of the review that the HR Policy Committee did. They actually completed the entire manual in their policy review, but these are simply policies that have been most recently updated through press as a result of changes in law, changes in school code.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question on, this would be number 1, I guess, on the board member conflict of interest. Number 1, to me, it's not clear in here. I'm, of course, on the bank board. I disclosed that my ethics statement or my statement of economic interests. I abstain on voting on any of those. I don't know how that is addressed in that policy. It says under state and federal law, which isn't very clear to me. But we do bank with the Wintrust in this case. So, that one troubles me a bit in that respect. And in addition, I'm not quite clear if one were to violate this policy that was alleged in certain activities recently that there were such violations, what is the penalty for that? There's nothing in here that says anything about that. So, to me, that posting needs to be addressed to clean that up so that it's clear on what is a state or, permitted by state or federal law. I know that that is a research that the bank board might figure out. But I think also there should be conceptually a penalty or whatever would happen if one violated this. Okay, in other words, we have a policy you can't, but what if you did? Because again, there were all kinds of allegations about things that, became an issue that were ridiculous, but, the point was they were brought up and that, they shouldn't have been discussed. So I'd like that to kind of be looked at before we vote on it, which would be in a future meeting. So it'd be 30 days.
Yes, Chairman, it'll be 30 days before we vote to approve it, so. And I wanted to point out, and take this opportunity, as Dr. Schuler mentioned, that the policies that have been reviewed this past year by the Human Relations Policy Committee that review process has been completed. I want to tell you how much I enjoyed reading every single policy that is in our administrative manual. But I do want to seriously extend my appreciation to Board Member Chris Crabtree, Dr. Amber, and Dr. Schuler for participating in the review. It's a review that was long overdue. It was laborious and eye-opening in many respects. And I have to tell you, I'm glad it's done. So,
thank you for doing it.
I want to kind of follow up on Jim's comments about the board conflict of interest. Thank you for bringing that up. But I'm not sure really under number one what beneficial interest directly or indirectly means. Maybe we can get some clarification from our attorney in the next month or so to help clarify, especially indirectly. I don't know what indirectly means in terms of what it might mean potentially to Jim, for example.
Hearing no other further comments or questions, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to approve the policy posting consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Crabtree,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Matheson. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree,
Yes.
Mr. Matheson,
Yes.
Mrs. Intihar,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill,
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani,
Yes.
Mr. Cronin.
Yes. Both consent agenda items have passed. We now move to action items. First action item is the adoption of a resolution authorizing non-reemployment of part-time, non-tenured, certified staff. Dr. Schuler.
Actually, the next two agenda items are part of the annual action that the board typically takes at this meeting. You are required by school code to release any certificated staff members 45 days prior to the end of the term. And so this first resolution is the resolution that releases all of our part-time, non-tenured certificated staff. Does not necessarily mean that those staff will not return, but certainly until staffing levels are finalized, we have made this release every year to make sure that we have ultimate flexibility in terms of how we approach staffing.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to adopt a resolution authorizing non-reemployment of part-time, non-tenured certified staff as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Coghill,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Crabtree. Mrs. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Coghill,
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree,
Yes.
Mrs. Intihar,
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mr. Matheson,
Yes.
Mr. Cronin.
Yes. The motion passes. And then the second one is the adoption of resolution authorizing non-reemployment of full-time, first, second, and third year non-tenured certified staff. There's additional information, Dr. Schuler. Are there any questions or comments from board members with respect to the second action item? Hearing none, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to adopt a resolution authorizing non-reemployment of full-time, first, second, and third year non-tenured certified staff as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Coghill. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll, please?
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Intihar?
Yes.
Mr. Brumman?
Yes, the motion passes. Third action item is approval of the resolution authorizing inter-fund loan from operations and maintenance fund to education fund. Dr. Schuler?
I think I already kind of jumped the gun on comment on this agenda item earlier under my report, but thank you to the state of Illinois for the need to do this, this next step.
Any comments or questions from board members with respect to action item number 3?
Yeah, just a quick question. I think in your comments you made reference to $12 million. In this background here, it mentions 8.2 million.
8.2 takes us up through the third quarter categorical. I was projecting ahead to
Okay.
fourth quarter.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Matheson?
Yeah, I just want to go on record and say how disappointed I am in the state legislature allow us to get in this situation. I feel that our representation is inept, and it's just really, we're one of the least funded educational programs in the country, and this is just unbelievable. It's just, again, we're trying to run a tight ship, and how do we do it? We don't have the industry that many areas have. But again, this comes into our play. So it's really, really disappointing to try and be an effective board member and be confronted by these type of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. Any other comments? Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and seventh,
Just one clarification, I think I know the answer, but so with this approval, we're authorizing the transfer from one fund to another. Once we receive payment, it automatically we transfer it back without board action. Is that correct?
Correct.
Hearing no further questions or comments, I hereby ask for a motion and a second to adopt the resolution authorizing inter-fund loan from operations and maintenance fund to education fund as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matheson, seconded by Mrs. Intihar. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mrs. Intihar?
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Brumman?
Yes. Action item number 3 passes. The fourth action item is the approval of the 2017-18 fee schedule. Dr. Schuler, any comments?
No, I don't have any additional comment other than what was in the report.
Any comments or questions from board members with respect to action item number 4?
I'll start since I'm the one that pulled it off. I would like us to have our finance committee take a look at the fee schedule for next year. We have not had an increase since the year 2010. I think in wake of things that have happened in terms of our referendum and looking at some budget shortfalls in the near future, this is one opportunity that we do have to look at for the 2017-18 school year. I would appreciate some thoughts from the finance committee to see, I'm guessing that in the last 7 years, the cost to educate children has gone up, but we have not raised those fees. I think it would be something that we need to look at for the next school year. So I would charge the finance committee to look at that before we make a decision.
I share the same concern as Mrs. Crabtree. I think there are some, sports that, for example, that pay for themselves, and other sports are very, very expensive to run. And, it's hard to argue with financial condition that we're going to find ourselves in and trying to fund the Sherman Bridges and do all kinds of other things. I think it's going to be hard to find that money, and every penny's going to add up. And if we have to say, we're going to either cut this forward or parents have to fund it themselves, then, maybe we need to be able to have the flexibility to make that decision.
Echo both of those comments, but specifically in terms of the mechanics, I know that one of the drivers of doing it now was to get it ready for registration. It's right around the beginning of June. Can you talk about the timeline if we don't approve this tonight, and what would have to happen to make sure we still hit that internal deadline of registration?
Yeah, I think the drop dead date for approving fees to make sure that we can get registration out would have to be your May meeting. So if the finance committee is willing to review this, we just have to get a meeting scheduled in advance of the May board meeting.
And so approving it in May, is that a pretty simple process after that fact to get it all inputted into the registration system?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The question I have is, I assume that part of that analysis will be competitive or comparative districts around us and what their fees are and so on.
And for the record, there was a comparative spreadsheet posted that was consent agenda. I along with Jim, members of the finance committee, were certainly willing to look at that and assess what the current fee schedule is and see if there's any opportunity to make any modifications in the schedule.
But I think it's fair that we have to give them some guidance. I mean, this is going down a blind alley here. I mean, what are we trying to accomplish? I think that's unfair for you guys on the facility or the finance committee to have to wrestle with a topic that's very nebulous as it relates to what we're trying to accomplish. So I think, I don't know what that number is or what we're trying to achieve, but I think it's unfair for the two of you and the senior leadership team to try and accomplish something without an end goal, I guess, is the point. And I don't have that answer. I don't think it's quite fair to you guys to go down this potentially blind alley.
Well, I would encourage board members. We're certainly not going to have a finance committee meeting tomorrow. It's going to be sometime in the future. If you have any thoughts besides comparing to what many of our benchmark or neighboring school districts are doing, which we have that information in the spreadsheet. You can catch the agenda that was circulated. If you have any additional thoughts on that, please share them with either Jim or me before the finance committee meeting so that we can consider them during the meeting.
I don't want to get into the next, discussion item, but I think the concern that comes to my mind is the, I don't want to say cost benefit, that's the wrong term, but the cost compared to what we're getting. Is it cost neutral? Is it how much money per student are we as a district funding through tax dollars? I think those things are important for whoever's going to be looking at budgets and looking at potential cuts. That's information for those people to have. So, for example, if to run track, it costs, $100 per kid, but to play baseball, it costs $1,000 per kid. I think somebody ought to know that, and somebody making decisions ought to be able to figure out maybe what's a happy medium point for the sports that cost more money, especially to do. That might, we did that this week. The parents came in and funded the whole thing, so.
This kind of point, I agree with everything you're saying, and I see no reason to not take an extra 3 or 4 weeks to analyze this, but this is also registration fees. This is not just how much it costs to play a sport. This is registering my kid for 2nd grade and 7th grade. That's in the mix as well.
As our technology fees and things like that, and we haven't touched those in 7 years, but we added all these Chromebooks, and we've done all of this, and I think we kind of need to look at the big picture.
We're talking about sport fees. I'm looking at a schedule attached to our report, and I don't see any sport fees in here at all. What I'm looking at, maybe I'm looking at the wrong page. There's 7 pages in there. Okay, there it is. lot of different fees that we're charging.
Athletic participation is on the bottom of page 2 for high schools.
Yeah, it's here.
Well, in any event, we will schedule a finance committee meeting and take a look at the schedule again. If you have additional thoughts that have been expressed tonight, you're sharing with the gentleman you vote. Dr. Schuler.
So we actually have to vote on this?
I'll just table it.
Just table it.
So we need to move the table it.
I move to table the 2017-18 fee schedule.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Zetterhard. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll.
Mrs. Crabtree,
Yes.
Mrs. Endahar.
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani,
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mr. Matheson,
Yes.
Mr. Brumman.
Yes. The motion to table the approval of the 2017-18 fee schedule is approved. We now move to action item number 5, which is the approval of paving projects and building permits at Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Whittier, Madison, and the School Service Center. Any further comments, Dr. Schuler?
No additional comments other than what's in the report. I do want to just mention this, these projects were included in the list of priority projects that the facility committee had identified for work this summer. So we have identified a need to do some paving work as well as a need to do some roofing projects this summer. So these are items off of our capital projects list.
One question on that. We transferred about $10 million at the beginning of the year from somewhere. Didn't we do it this year?
We transferred $1.5 million of fund balance to projects that were completed last summer. This is coming out of the O&M budget, but these paving projects are coming out of the operations and maintenance budget for this year. The roofing will come out of the $2.5 million capital outlay for next year.
Okay, so we budgeted for those in those two capacities at this time, and these are, I assume, high priority needs.
Yes.
I know some of these schools, and these are real, I believe, safety issues for students.
Even the one, the SSC is on here too, the school service center, is that? I'm just saying, in light of the fact that the referendum did not pass, and if there are other things that should be done as a result instead of paving. I mean, if there's safety issues, I get it.
Yeah, we'll say on this is that, so regardless of the outcome of the referendum, when we looked at all of the items on the capital projects list for this summer, these were the needs that were prioritized. So I don't see that priority changing as a result of outcome. I think these are still our most significant needs.
I agree. I mean, we've talked about the importance of doing improvements, capital improvements across the district. That doesn't go away because of the April 4th vote. These are, facility committee review these with the administration. I believe there's safety issues here. I don't know what the small portion of this bid is, the SSC. Is it $40? We had good prices, good bids, we're below budget. I would maintain continuing the recommendation to proceed with this summer.
Any further comments or questions? If not, I ask for a motion and a second to approve the paving project and building permits at Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Whittier, Madison, and at the School Service Center. Move to approve. Moved by Mr. Matheson, seconded by Mrs. Zetterhard. Mrs. Hutchison, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Matheson,
Yes.
Mrs. Endahar,
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani,
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mr. Brumman?
Yes. The motion to approve the paving projects and building permits in Emerson, Hawthorne, Lincoln, Boulder, Madison, and the SSC is approved. We now move to the discussion item. And if I may, I know I sent this email to all the board members, but I'd like to make this a record. I'm sincerely looking forward to our discussion tonight. I believe that having this discussion item on the agenda is an important first step to begin to address the challenges we as a board now confront as a result of the decisions our residents made on the referendum question and in the school board candidate contests. I'm sure that we all have our thoughts on what our residents were telling us as a board, the votes they cast on April 4th on the referendum question and for the candidates for school board. I anticipate that each of you will share these thoughts tonight. I'm also confident each of you, as I do, have ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and concerns about what next steps we should take as a board as a result of the outcome of the election. I look forward to hearing these ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and concerns as well. The discussion we will have tonight, I believe, will be an important first step in beginning to respond to the results of the election. After all, the facility master plan next steps is a discussion item on the agenda, not an action item. As a first step, I expect that during tonight's discussion, we will identify questions, issues, topics, and concerns that need to be addressed and/or answered, and then delegate that task of addressing or answering these matters we have identified to the appropriate board committee or administrator. Additional steps we as a board may take after that include perhaps a listening tour in our District 200 community to gain a better sense of the message the voters are sending on April 4th, as well as to identify measures that can be implemented to heal some of the rifts and divisiveness that surfaced during the election campaign. Indeed, this discussion tonight can also be a first step in the healing process. I've had the distinct honor and privilege of serving as a fellow board member with each of you. I sincerely feel blessed to have as my fellow board members people who are thoughtful, diligent, dedicated, and passionate about our District 200 mission. I'm always impressed with the way we conduct our deliberations. You've been thoughtful, measured, and respectful in the manner you express yourself and the way you listen to the thoughts expressed by your fellow board members. The way we deliberate is consistent with the social and emotional learning skills we ask the children in our district to embrace. So I look forward to this discussion tonight. Anybody want to be first?
So we don't need any peace circles?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
We got the stick. I mean, we were ready to go.
All right.
I'll go first. It's really not a specific, I have a list of things I want, a short list of specific things for the committee, but, as I look to the next really 3 or 4 months and over the next year, we really have 2 budgets we're dealing with. So fiscal year 18, which is already in the process of developing the budget, which is for this coming school year. We've got probably less flexibility to make big decisions in this short period of time. So, what are those incremental decisions we can make? What are the key decisions that have been going into the budget now? Might be a nice update for the board in the next couple of months. If there's choices we have versus just recommendations, that would be helpful. But thinking about next year, or that fiscal year 19 budget, that's where a lot of the research and hard work's going to be going into as a result of the conversation or the vote on April 4th. So over the next year, what are the timelines that we're going to have? What are those key discussions and decisions, and how does that maybe intersect with our agreement with WWEA, which is going to possibly complicate things? So what options, scenarios, choices are we going to get presented by the administration to the board providing the committee? So I really look at this as 2 timelines. The short-term fiscal year 18 budget, which we have to approve in September, by the end of September, and then a longer term, which are probably more complicated, difficult decisions we have to make as a board over the next year, really a year and about 16 months. So the difference between those 2 is important.
Okay, I have about a page and a half, but I'll try to be as concise as possible. First off, I appreciate that all of our questions have been now sorted by category, because I think what we can do is have our board subcommittees start looking at some of these questions. I have some other big thoughts out there that I was thinking about today. Curious as to how much we have to spend, an approximate cost, on things like unfunded mandates that the state of Illinois puts out there for us. What are opportunities with things like sponsorships that we can look at for maybe some of our activities and things like that? Are we governed by, are there rules through IHSA that we cannot get sponsorships for some of our, maybe some of our sports activities or some of our clubs? Let's see, do we have obligations for this next year with IHSA? Are we tied with all of our activities for that already? Are there any things that we can do? I understand we can't do things with personnel. So we had dates that we needed to do that, but can we be looking at things like raising possibly a class size and not hiring come August if we hit that class size? So we can kind of look at some things like that. I'm with Brad. We need to be kind of looking next year and then bigger picture for the year after. I'd like us to do some kind of thinking about how can we get more opportunities for community members to be involved, to hear their voice. Are there opportunities such as maybe some committees that we could have out there, getting the people involved in maybe a capital campaign? I know we have a feasibility study coming due soon. Maybe that's a way to get some of the people. I love the idea of a listening tour, but I really would like to engage some of our naysayers to be part of the solution. I want to hear what they have to say. And so how do we get more of the 75% that don't have children in our schools? How do we listen to them, and how do we get them involved? So the thought I had, we do our Friday focus every week in our website, and maybe we could put out there a weekly survey question. It's an easy survey. Just some things that we want to engage and get some answers, just to see, is this a hot topic that's out there? And I mean, a survey question is simple, yes, no, but if something very simple, somebody just has to make a click. I know that a lot of websites have a daily question and things like that. Maybe we could have a weekly survey question, and maybe that'd be another way we can kind of get a pulse of what's going on out there. So those are just kind of some things that I'm thinking about.
I might be making life a little complicated for those who come on board May 3rd, and obviously I won't be here, but I do have some thoughts about kind of framing our questions in such a way that we kind of put our expectations or our expected results in how we do it. So, maybe results is the wrong word, but our strategy. If our strategy is, we're just going to live with this decision, make it a final decision, and try to do what we can for our students with the funds we have coming in. I think we need to look at the scenario, how we plan for that, how we deal with that, what we do to make that work, and yet get our buildings fixed, because obviously they're going to continue to deteriorate. I think another scenario is a plan to run another referendum. So if you're going to do that, then you need to kind of have some short-term plans that will carry you through till you think you could pass a referendum again. Now, my thought, if you're going to go with option two, you need to find a number that the whole board can coalesce around. It has to be a unanimous decision. So I guess my thought would be we need to have that discussion, because if that number is 0, then you know what you have. If that number is something greater than 0, then perhaps that's the number we take to the community and say, okay, is this a better number for you? or we get a sense of the community, and the people who were the loudest objectors, we say to them, is there any number that you will accept? And then let's work back from there. I mean, I like to set goals and then set the numbers to the goals. That's how I've always operated my own life. But sometimes you have to set the number and then figure out what you can do within that number. So those are my thoughts about how to proceed, and but I honestly think that unless you can get everyone on board, coalesced around a number, your odds of going for referendum again are just as diminished as they were in this. Because then you have you're split as a board, then you're split as a community, and you've got all kinds of stuff going on, and it just doesn't work. It didn't work in 1998. In 99, I'm sorry, 98 we had a split board, it didn't work. 99 we had a unanimous board, and we went to the community and said, how much will you support? And they gave us a number, and we worked with the number, and that's what worked. So, there was a lot of, I've been through 3 referendums that have passed. And those are the things, as I look around this, those are the things that we had back then that we didn't have either in this referendum or the one before. So, my little bit of institutional knowledge before I leave.
Anyone else?
Oh, sorry.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got some comments. One thing that I just thought of when Chris was talking, we talked about 75% for 4 years since I've been on board. But what's unique is we can now, once we get information from the county, we can go figure out which 29,000 people voted. We don't know how they voted, but we can figure out which ones voted. So maybe rather than I like the idea of listening to it, but maybe we need to focus on those 29,000 people rather than the nebulous 75%. We have that data. It's not available right now, but it will be eventually from the county. So that might be helpful. A couple committee thoughts I had. First, teaching and learning. I'd like to get a long list of future considerations that have cost savings or efficiencies that might be in that. Have a menu and maybe have a rating for each item that has an impact on student learning. It's a rating of a 1 versus a rating of a 9. Having that menu and that deep conversation from the teaching and learning committee, that's one of those big long-term issues that are going to be complicated. Finance, I'd like to really better understand the legal ability we have through debt service extension base to fund improvements and how that gets overlaid with the existing debt and planned refinancing. I know that that's something that a lot of school districts use to make improvements in their buildings. We've used that once, but I know that it comes with controversy because it is issuing debt, but I'm not saying it's a great solution, but it is a solution available to us. So what those possibilities are would be interesting to me. And I think there's going to be a lot of education around that, just not like, here's how much is available. On the facility side, I guess giving myself a assignment. I think in terms of the capital needs, we need to kind of reshape that capital plan, maybe formally publish the next 5-year plan, including the secured entrances most likely, and specifically identifying what we're going to do. So here's what we're going to do in 2018, here's what we're going to do in 2019, kind of map that out, I think, kind of reshaping that. Kind of reshaping that plan for future public consumption might be helpful. And then, the one thing that is still kind of bugging me is our early childhood situation. I think we've all agreed that it's not a good solution to Jefferson, so I think we have to go back and re-explore some other options, which are not going to be ideal solutions, but maybe that's what the cards that are handed to us, whether we need to do an addition or renovation onto Jefferson, whether we have some capabilities at one of our elementary schools to do an addition, which we could do without a referendum. We could do an addition to an elementary school without a referendum and still have to pay for it. That might go to my question about the debt service extension base. Do we have capacity at any of our undersized, not underutilized elementary schools? So I think there's a deeper conversation there within the facility committee. I think there's maybe something related to community engagement and finance that I think is so critical to us. Well, you know, school finance is so complicated. And we've done a lot of work over the past 7, 10 years to be good financial stewards, but that gets all washed away when you're in the middle of a campaign. And it was probably one of the central conversations that I know Jim and I heard a lot about. So I would love to explore on the community engagement side, how do we convey the complexities of school finance? How do we talk about and highlight our past efforts? Is there a way to, you know, provide more depth to our regular reporting to the community about the nuances and the challenges we have? So I think there's a whole conversation about that. And the NATA board committee, but superintendent committee, enrollment committee, I think it makes sense to maybe go back and look at, maybe update our demographic projections. I know there's other vendors out there that have done it. Maybe we need to, like we've done with a lot of our other vendors, explore options. Maybe we need to put that out for bid, but I definitely think it's valuable to get new numbers before, because that was a central part of what we heard about. So those are some, I guess, specific requests of individual committees that I think would be helpful over the next 16 months or 17 months.
To chime in, Brad, on the enrollment committee, I would also like for them to be looking at programmatic changes that may have happened in those buildings when numbers, you know, some of those numbers for capacity were maybe before other programs have come into play. So I would like those numbers also to be relooked at for that in particular.
I've been hammering on enrollment capacity for the last week because, in fact, even before that, because an erroneous number was thrown out there, and then that all of a sudden became the number that was never really corrected or explained well enough, at least for it to sink in some people's minds. We think we have all this excess capacity at Hubble, but we really don't, because there was a number that was thrown out that was incorrect. So going forward, what I would expect to get from staff and with board participation, however you want to do it, is however you want to report capacity, report capacity. And we agree on how we're going to report it, and everybody looks at it and says, yes, this is the right way to report it. It gets reported that way consistently, systematically, and we deal with that issue because we're having people tell us, we have room, we have room, we have room, and then we're all looking at different charts and different numbers and using different ways, and it's confusing, I think, to the community. You know, I mean, I know we had the big binder with the heat maps and all that in it, but nobody would, you know, we weren't explaining that when we were going out to talking to people, and I couldn't explain it if I tried. I couldn't explain a heat map if somebody asked me. All I know is somebody threw out a number, and I was saying, I don't think that's the right number for Hubble, it's really this. You know, and so you're always, I think people need to have some sort of tangible feeling that what you're asking for is not pie in the sky, it's something that you need or you can't do it. Yeah, if you want to do it in Jefferson, you can't put those kids elsewhere. I think they need to have kind of a rock solid proof that you can't put those kids elsewhere.
And just for the record, each board member had in their green folder a list of items that Dr. Schuler has been segregated into different areas. Budget, enrollment, building capacity. Many of these items have been expressed verbally tonight by board members that we're going to review. If I can describe that document to Dr. Schuler.
Yeah, this actually started, we started this document actually back in February with the initial discussion around budget planning for next year, and I simply added to that document as we have moved along with certainly an anticipation of for tonight. It was getting to be a very lengthy list of questions, and so this may not be ultimately the best of coding systems, but we wanted to do something to begin to kind of categorize the document so you can see where the questions are falling in actually for us to make sure that we caught some duplication in questions and where things were similar. So.
You know, and I think the other thing that we got questioned on heavily is You know, I think there was a sense in the community that our school district was going to be dangerously in debt. And I think there are norms and statistics that probably could have been put out there or should be put out there on a regular basis so that the community has a feeling of either comfort or discomfort, that they know where we are compared to where we could be, or what's good or what's terrible, or what's, you know, where we are and where the debt. I kept hearing, gee, we're going to be so much in debt, and the reality is the way the referendum was structured, we would have been. So I think that might be something that gets put out there, maybe on the website in a way that everybody can understand. I know it's another one of those things that school finance is tricky to understand, but I think we have to make an attempt and know that our community members are smart enough to read it and understand it.
Will this be published now for the community to be able to see what it is that we're looking at? I just want to be sure that that's okay.
Right?
Well, first of all, I am so sad that the board and staff is now going to have to spend all this time figuring out how to deal with this, when if it had passed, think what you could be thinking about and using your time for. It just is such a shame. But my only thoughts would be for the future, like when we could say that it was more cost effective and just more financial sense to build a new Jefferson versus not, I mean, that's should be first like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So if I, you have to break it down to each one of, a classroom size that we can save a teacher, but what's it like to be able capacity? Maybe get teachers out, like in my teacher group, when they had such a problem with the class size, that, the teacher said she can't teach. It was driving her crazy to have such a high classroom size. So, maybe more input from the frontline people of how things are affecting them. And maybe how by us having debt, that many districts have debt, that it's just a common, we all have mortgages, so we should be accustomed to having, we're paying for our big thing, we have debt ourselves usually, so just how that it's okay, and this is just the way school districts, we are not, a money-making machine here, we're not a business, we're this people service business, so, it's going to have to be more, more real logical thinking on their part and just to reach them, because, for the average person, they read that, they haven't even been paying attention to the whole thing, and all they see is, oh, my taxes are going to increase. It's such an easy no, because they don't want to think about it, or I hear people all the time, well, I don't have kids in school anymore. So you've got to twist them and turn them to, get to their heart, get to their caring, their citizenship, responsibility to take care of our kids. But it's such a shame to think what you're doing with your time instead of this.
Jim?
Yeah, I think that, we had a lot of discussion over the last month and a half during this campaign. And, I think that I heard a lot of verbiage about issues without any solids being directed. Or all the solids were things that we can't change. We can't terminate staff and lower salary costs because we're under contract. So, those kind of verbiages led the community down the path that, that I thought was unacceptable. there was a lot of money spent against us. You know, I'm going to guess it to be 50 or 1,000 more in advertising to not pass this referendum. So, you know, how much did we spend? You know, we did what we could do, but the reality, there was no organized effort. I think the underlying drift of what I've heard, it was too much, okay? You know, and I think it was focused on a number of 200 million, not a number of $160. So we, you know, again, we have to, and I think the concept there was this fundamental lack of trust in school board. And it amazes me when I hear that. But at any rate, so, you know, I think we have to make sure we get, you know, supportive elected officials. I'll tell you that right now. I think we need to have people that support education representatives. And I don't think we have that in this community. But in the bigger picture, I felt that this program was a 15-year solve, 10 to 15-year solve if we pass this. I think what we have to do now is go back to the facilities committee and address what I would call the 3 to 4 year needs, the ones that are going to, the roofs are going to fall down or the bricks are going to fall out of the building. And we fund that whatever way we can. And that funding, you know, it's a deferred maintenance. How much do we hear of that? Well, we're going to get more deferred if we don't deal with these problems. So, you know, so if we have, I'm going to call it $7 million of fund balance, and if we have the opportunity to find other revenue sources, whether it's the debt service extension bonds or whatever, I feel comfortable we have to address those. So that deals with what I would call part of the $90,000 improvement fund. You know, and we have to address that. In some way, we can't do it all. There's no way we can sell that many bonds. So we have to focus on the near term and then potentially go back after we've so-called proved ourselves, I guess, and deal with the, you know, the longer term out, the, you know, the second part of what I'll call the $90 million cost. I think we have to right now abandon the 21st century learning. You know, it's as terrible as that is. That was the second component of the effort. And I think that, you know, Jefferson now, it's been beat twice. We have to find a better alternative. I don't know what that is. I heard no suggestion that made sense. We looked at every suggestion. You know, and, you know, it still was a topic. So, you know, again, I think we have to, I don't want to panic on this. I don't want to start cutting programs until we look at a better picture of how to solve this problem. And again, if we can spend, you know, $40 million fixing things that'll last us 3 to 4 years, or things that we have to address in 3 to 4 years versus 5 to 7, because we had a 5-year build-out plan on what I would call a 10 to 15-year solve. So let's get the, you know, the paving that we voted on today, the roofs that are going to fall down, the bricks that are going to fall, and get those done with whatever way we've got to do it. I personally can support a debt service extension bond. I think that's, you know, that's a number that I think people can live with. I don't care what the criticism is. I feel responsible as a board member to make sure these kind of solves are done. So, you know, so I think that's critical. You know, if there's other revenue sources, I do think we have to really look at, and I know that every district in the state of Illinois has a challenge with early learning centers. And, you know, we've talked about this in the past. I don't know what the solution is. You know, but, you know, clearly you know, that's not, just from a number of student basis, okay, you know, number of students affected, you know, it's a very challenging to spend of that, we'll call it $40 million, $20 million, or whatever the number is, to fix or deal with a Jefferson right now. There's got to be another alternative solution. I don't know what it is right now, but it's got to be addressed. So, you know, I think that, you know, we, you know, maybe we look down the line, we try to set the table for this. We get some people that are supportive in the right places, and we start dealing with as bonds get paid off, as we now cycle through that. And we pay some off some bonds, and we, you know, again, I'm more than happy to do the debt service extension because I think we need to do it. And avoid substantially affecting programs. I think we have to fine tune it where we can. But, you know, I think that, you know, we will lose the confidence of the people that we represent that did support us in this campaign to basically, you know, to provide the best education we can, which I think we're already there. I didn't hear any candidate talk about not being here because of the good education that we provide. And, you know, so now we're saying, okay, well, let's cut this and do that. You know, that was absurd. You know, and the voters said that. And I think the voters that voted against the referendum just said it was too much. And it was sold that way, it was advertised that way. And there's a lot of dollars spent against us that way. So, you know, I don't want to panic here. I want to do what we can in the dollars we have available, abandoning what I would call 2 components of that process, look to it down the road, but, try to maintain staff and try to maintain programs to the best we can. We've stayed within our budgets. It's going to be a challenge to negotiate a new contract next year and we're up next year. So that's going to be a real challenge. So, and that one is another big piece of this pie. So, and I don't know, is this the teacher's fault? It's the system's fault. But it is what it is. So, I look forward to maintaining the fine education we can, finding a way to fund the most demanding challenges or deferred maintenance or fixes that we've got to deal with, and then move forward as best we can. And when we start running low and when we spent that $7 million fund balance and the state still hasn't paid us and so on, then we got to panic, okay? And I don't want to be at that point yet. I don't want to, when I look at this, I don't want to start analyzing whether sports should be limited. I've heard nothing but good things about the after school, all the clubs and organizations. Every time we have a board meeting at one of the schools, and the students are there, this is a primary highlight. We heard it at the state board, the Illinois Association of School Business, or school boards, or whatever it was. We heard that about how critical colleges look at participation in extracurricular activities. We can't take that away from our kids. Maybe we have to fee it up, I don't know. But, the point is, we can't now abandon something here based on what I would call a temporary setback. Because I think there was just a nasty effort to try and get this thing failed and then it got done. And I'm really disappointed in, a relatively small group of people in our community. Very, very disappointed. So, that said, I just want to stand back and, take this thing in stride and deal with it and try those fundings, And I'm a little worried, to be truthful, with this DSEP funding. I think we have to move quickly on it, because I think there's a proposed bill by somebody that we know well to try and eliminate that process. And I don't want that window to close. Again, I think we have to move quickly without making changes. So that would be my opinion on the process.
Jim?
Well, for me, it's very premature to start laying out what the next steps are relative to facility planning. That's not going to be accomplished here tonight. I think we still have not seen the results from the survey. We've made that investment relative to trying to identify someone who's philanthropic and want to commit some funds to the district that can help us guide some particular projects. So I think we wait till we get that survey and see what the success or failure of that was. Clearly, we've got our marching orders. We know that there's a policy in place now relative to the Sherman Burgess, and we have to adhere to that policy. So I guess I would ask the senior leadership team to bring us a preliminary budget with that factor included there, so we can start seeing what projects are going to be dropping off that facility plan. Because as Jim has mentioned, it's two components, right? Some 21st century learning and some needs, if you will, with regard to building maintenance, if you will, and capital improvements. But until we see those, for me anyway, until we see those two elements, it's hard to even begin the process or the plan of what the next steps are, because that's going to help guide us with regard to what we can take off the list and then focus on what remains on the list and do some, like Brad mentioned, some longer term planning and trying to refine those numbers. So I just think that, for me, that's kind of the next logical steps, and then we can maybe start revisiting the balance of the facilities plan and how we might be able to navigate through that.
Just quick clarification there, Jim. The Sherman Burgess didn't address at all 21st century teaching. That was only the capital needs. And I thought a lot about that Sherman Burgess policy. All it does is it's a recommendation to allocate funds within a budget. Stop using my hands. It doesn't directly line up with capital improvements that are on our capital list. So that's the role of the facility committee, to go back and find those improvements that are the highest priorities, the most critical, that have a dollar associated with it, and then figure out how much you can do within the budget that's allocated. Because Sherman Burgess is a recommendation for funding, a budgeting set aside to go into, I guess, the term is seeking fund, to fund future improvements. It's not, here's how much we have to spend this year.
And one other thing that I want to add is that the community, I feel, also told us that our pencil wasn't sharp enough in our operating budget. So what I would ask, and I hear you, and you know what, Mr. Madison, I'm just so proud of you. You have no idea, because you know you have learned so much about what it means to run a school district from the first time I met you, and no, seriously, and not running, but no, I'm sorry, I'm saying it the wrong way, but I can tell your heart is in the real education process, and I know with your strength being in finance, you know, it's not something that that I expected to hear from you 4 years ago, and I'm hearing it tonight, and I'm just feeling like, okay, this is going to be our champion to make sure we don't cut our good programs, because that's kind of what I'm all about. But facing this, can we still deliver our good programs at a lesser cost? Do we have, it was pointed out that we have as many staff today as we had when we had 1,500 more students. Is there a reason for that? Is there, I think those are the kinds of things that maybe the community would like to know, and maybe those kinds of things, if explained well enough, can bring back some of that confidence that this, that we're doing things in the most cost-effective manner as possible.
Any other comments, board members? If not, I have really just a few. I emphasized in my opening remarks that the need I thought for us to have a listening tour of some sort. And that listening tour would take the form of a survey, and some effort to reach out to the community. And it's because when I look at the results of the election on April 4th, there are mixed messages. Yes, the referendum failed. But unlike the referendum 4 years ago, which failed like both from 59 to 41%, this failed 54 to 46%, and we're asking for 8 times, 9 times the amount of money tomorrow. What does that mean? What does it mean that the 4 candidates, our 2 incumbents here, and Mr. Hanlon and Mrs. Erickson, who all supported the referendum, were elected by substantial margins? To gain some meaning from that is difficult unless we engage in some sort of listening tour, do a survey to find out what directions we can go. I agree with Jim. We've talked about this several times before, both at board meetings and in private, about the opportunity to look at decent financing, and I think we need to explore that. I'm on board with that. I'm also on board with the idea that we must avoid putting programs. I agree with Barb here, but maybe there's a way we can fine-tune our approach and take that sharp end. I also have thought that it's necessary for us to find a way to finance, to some extent, the secured entry problem that we have. I was bullish on that before I got Dr. Schuler's report tonight about how the way the federal payments we're receiving and how much our reserve is helping us overcome that issue here without having to borrow money. But I'd like to see us address secured entries beginning this summer in some fashion. By and large, everything that's been said tonight is something we need to investigate, research, and address in some fashion. And Dr. Schuler here has been writing vociferously to the memo that he put together. Already has a number of items on the project. So, Mrs. Intihar, Mrs. Cogdill, even after you retire after May 2nd, I may be calling on you for some insights on all these challenges that we have here. And throw down the gauntlet to Mrs. Erickson and Mr. Hanlon out there. In case you're wondering if there's anything to do, it's here. But thank all of you. I do thank all of you for the views you expressed tonight. And with that, we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which are written reports. You all have to receive the monthly financial reports and the FOIA report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one thing. I'm cleaning out my stuff. I'm sorry. I actually had a whole recycle can full of papers because when my 16 years on the board generated a lot of paper in my house. And I I ran across, I don't know where I got these, but I got different sayings that educators gave me. And some of them I saved for Mrs. Erickson or whoever wants them now. But I just wanted to bring this tonight, and I think this summarizes our discussion around the table. And it says, what we do to kids, they grow up and do to the world. And I think we all have that spirit in our hearts, serving as a board, and certainly the staff and administration too. I think we want our kids to really do to the world all the nice things and the genuine things that they're taught in District 200. So if any of you would want this.
Can you sign that? Can you Joey sign that? Sure. People with us?
I don't want to grab a copy. I'm sorry. I guess that was a point of privilege.
It was. And as I said, the written reports that we posted and circulated, that's the monthly financial reports, employer report, board committee reports have been attached to the agenda, are available to review. Are there any other reports from board members? Hearing none, we have topics for future discussion, which include professional development plan, multi-tiered system of support, goal update, the fiscal year 19 budget plan, and addressing policy 4.152, which is the Sherman-Durgis policy. And again, we'll continue to address the facility master plan and the next steps. We have a chat with the board scheduled for April 19, 2017 at 8 a.m. at Wheaton, Warrenville South High School. This is a change from the date. This was originally scheduled for April 5. Our committee of the whole meeting is April 26 at the School Service Center at 7:30 p.m. Our next official board meeting is on May 2nd, 2017, which will be the board reorganization meeting at 5:30 at the School Service Center. And then our next regular board meeting will be on May 10th, 2017 at 7:30 p.m. again at the School Service Center. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
No.
We do have a closed session tonight. The closed session items that are listed for possible action include the employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and dismissal of specific employees of the district pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 subparagraph C subparagraph 1. Ask for a motion and a second to adjourn to the closed session. So moved by Mrs. Crabtree.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Coghill. Mrs. Hutchinson, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Crabtree?
Yes.
Mrs. Coghill?
Yes.
Mr. Gambiani?
Yes.
Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
Mrs. Zahar?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Perlman?
Yes, motion passes to move to closed session.